and welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Shireen, and I'm the creator of Law of Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm super happy that you're here, and this week I'm really excited about the episode because it's going to be all about crystals, and I love crystals. And I have the amazing crystal lover Jana Stern as my guest. She's a certified life activation practitioner, a metaphysical energetic healer, a meditation guide, clairvoyant, and self-love councillor. And she loves working with energy healing and crystals, and she's got into this through her own personal healing journey. And in this week's episode, we really cover everything about crystals, what they are, how to work with them, how to pick out maybe your first crystals, how you work with them to cleanse and charge them, and just take care of them and use them to heal yourself, to strengthen yourself, your body. So it's a really exciting episode, and I hope it benefits you and that you can learn more about crystals, which I love. And please share this episode with anyone who you think would love to know more about crystals. And if you share the episode on your Instagram, I do a personal oracle card reading for you. So just enjoy. Hi, Jana. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. How's it going?
Great. I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I was telling my friends that I actually am having like a little bit of excitement about being on your show. I'm really like nervous about it. I talk a lot for a living, but I'm very stoked about this. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you for being here and for taking your time. And I always ask the first question, which is, how do you stay mindful and present?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, I try and do everything as mindfully as possible. Definitely, I have a practice of meditation and of just centering. I find that, at the end of the day, if I don't light my candles and put on some music, I'm just not there for other people. I practice yoga, but really, I think my mindfulness drops into just being consciously aware of my thoughts as much as possible, and then allowing the people that I trust and that I love to really offer me reflections of when I'm maybe not being mindful, and not, and trying not to take that on too personally when they give me that feedback. So, because sometimes as mindful as I try to be, or as we try to be, there's always more mindfulness available. There's always more that we're not seeing. So I try and allow loving feedback to that mindfulness as much as I can.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And I think we can start by talking about you, and maybe you can tell listeners about your background and what you do and how you got here.
Mm-hmm. So I am a metaphysical energy healer, and I've been practicing for about 5 years, and I've been doing readings for about 10, and I've been working with crystals since I was a very, very, very little girl. I was blessed that my grandfather had a mining company. They would dig for oil in West Canada here, out in Alberta and Winnipeg, out there, Saskatchewan. And when they would uncover different crystals on their digs, my grandfather would bring them home. so he had a huge collection of like over 300 different crystals, big pieces, little pieces that he had found along his travels. And so as a child, we would go to their house in Pennsylvania, and I would just spend so much time sitting there and listening and playing and just doing whatever I could, you know, to be near those crystals. And so that's always been a part of my, you know, part of my story. And then somewhere in my teens and 20s, I sort of forgot myself, as we tend to in our adolescence. And I went sort of, as I always say, down the rabbit hole of depression, and had a number of different diagnoses and different things that I struggled with, eating disorders and mental health diagnoses. And I found at that time a healing. I found a woman who I really connected with, and she gave me a healing in a energy exchange for a new website that I built for her. And I received this healing called the Life Activation, and it changed my life so profoundly that I thought, okay, I got to learn what this thing is, and I got to give it to people because it really does something. And that's kind of where I found, you know, a lot of my spirituality. It's where I connected in with myself on higher levels. And in doing so, it opened up the floodgates for me to then be able to help other people to do the same. And in, you know, combining my gifts of talking to crystals, which really reignited after my life activation, I was able to really, really start to help people in lots of different ways to push through their version of being human. So that's kind of how I've landed where I am today.
Wow. That's beautiful. And, you know, for everyone that has ever followed me on Instagram or connected with me, they know that I love crystals, because I think the first time I actually had an encounter with crystals was during my very first Reiki healing that I received. And I didn't... So I barely knew anything about Reiki, and I knew like nothing about crystals. So it was like an activation, because I remember her using like rose quartz all around my body. And yeah, so that's the first crystal I really...
Talk about being enveloped in like energy of love.
Yes, it's so deep. And like, yeah, self-love was like the key to everything in that moment. And yeah, so I really started looking into it. And then, you know, divine synchronicity like led me into like deepening my understanding into crystals. And we can see that like the knowledge and the wisdom around these like gifts from earth are emerging. And I would love to talk more about crystals and how we can use them. How would you describe what let's say someone has never, maybe they've encountered crystals but never knew what they do? How would you describe it?
Well, I often tell people, you know, right off the bat, I'm like, you know, if you were in the earth and you suffered as much pressure as they do, and then you came out as beautiful as they are, you also would have magical powers. So, you know, they really, you know, really what crystals are, they're just different elements, right? If you look at the periodic table, they're just different elements that have been, like I say, pressurized in the earth over time. And they emit frequencies that help us to, they sort of absorb the energy of what's going on around us. So when we place a crystal on our body, when we have them in our hands, when we, you know, if you're me, you tuck them into a bra, you know, whatever you're doing with them, you are absorbing the frequency that they are radiating at all times. So, you know, when we use them in crystal healing with intention like that, we're really channeling in, okay, well, what does this specific frequency of this specific crystal, how is that going to help this person, and what can we pull out of them? So I imagine that in your first Reiki session that you were experiencing, that you were talking about earlier, rose quartz really is a stone of self-love. And I imagine that at that time, self-love was probably majorly lacking in your life. And so I imagine that your practitioner was probably somebody who was tapping into that and feeling that, you know, more than anything, I teach to almost all of my clients, you know, the thing that gets us through life is learning to love ourselves. You know, it's learning to accept ourselves as we are, not when this, not if that, just really as we are. And, you know, the frequency of rose quartz is precisely exactly that. Love yourself, love the planet, love each other, just be love. And, you know, that is something that we all need. And so, you know, each crystal does have its own unique frequency. And because of the nature of frequency, you know, we get a lot of people who are like, well, crystals don't work and they're all in your head. But like, so is literally every thought you think. So, you know, they are quite real in a lot of different ways, in a metaphysical way. But what I often get into is like, yeah, you know, how I interpret a situation and how you interpret a situation and how 10 other people would interpret the exact same situation would be different. So how we are all tapping into the frequency of crystals might vary, meaning, you know, if you get an amethyst, one person will tell you something and one person will tell you something else, but they'll all kind of be under that same general umbrella of, this is going to help you with your intuition. This is going to help you to really understand what your higher self is trying to give you and how to connect to that energy on a consistent basis, right? So, you know, you may not, a lot of what I teach about crystals is that, you know, the wand really does choose the wizard. You have to learn to trust your intuition that you know what you need in the moment. So for example, during your Reiki, you know, when you really needed that self-love, that person probably felt into, okay, let's just pour it all over her. Let's just douse her in self-love, right? Because that's what that frequency is all about. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so beautiful that they are like solid flowers, like you said. They've grown like crystallized from like maybe simple rocks into this. It's like a higher manifestation of the earth. And yeah, I think it's I think also like with everything on our spiritual path, they cross your way when you need them, and you evolve together with them. And the I think after that experience, I wore like a rose crystal bracelet many years, because I went to Japan after that, and that's when I realized that Reiki is from Japan, and I found my Reiki master right after that. So I did my first Reiki attunement there, and I wore a rose quartz bracelet from a temple there for many years until it broke. So when it broke, I thought, yeah, now like my journey with these crystals are completed, right?
That is how that works. You know, people are always like, well, what if it breaks? I'm like, then you have two. It's not, you know, crystals do that. They disappear for real. They just, you know that you put it down in that one spot and it's been sitting there and waiting for you. And then for whatever reason, it's just gone.
Yeah.
And that's because when they're finished with you, they're finished with you. You don't get to determine. And it's a good reminder that the universe really has way bigger plans than you can understand when you work with crystals. You know, you just start to tap into, wow, like, I guess I was done with that. You know, that's when they break. That's when they, you know, I can't tell you how many times I've been doing energy work with crystals, and literally they will, you know, my favorite is that I had one tucked in my bra one day, and I was doing some big work, and it was a rose quartz, and I was just really working through some big trauma with that stone close to my heart. And as soon as I got undressed at the end of the day, there was a clear cut straight down the middle of it. And and it's just, you know, that magic is the thing about crystals that I love the very, very, very most, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. And I remember just one, I think it was like 4 years ago, I went and bought, sometimes I just go into a crystal shop to see if I like connect with anything. I don't have an intention to buy anything, but sometimes I just connect.
You're speaking my language, girl.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yes.
And yeah, and
I actually got a job that way one day, working
really?
at a crystal store. Just
crystal
wandered
shop?
in. Yeah.
Oh, that's synchronicity.
Yeah. Shout out to alternative thinking, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. And I just went in and I saw the angel quartz, like the clear quartz that has this rainbow, like shimmery thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought it, and I went home and cleansed it and did all of that. And I wore it maybe 1 or 2 times and it broke. So I went back to the shop and said, it really, like, I barely wore it. And she said, okay, let us, like, I think either they put it together or they gave me a new one, but that one broke too. And then, and I read about it, and even the lady at the shop said, this opens up for a higher truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not ready for that, you can't wear it. So I just took it home. I didn't wear it. I had it at my window for years. I still haven't worn it. I'm like scared to break it again. But they're so beautiful. But we have to know, like, we have to vibrate on that frequency.
You know, it's funny that you say that. I had a Tibetan quartz that literally the exact same thing happened to me. I was with my mom. We went into a crystal shop, and I was like, oh my God, I love it. I love it. I love it. I just need it. And I went and I purchased it. And I swear, I don't even think it made it home. It had crumbled in the bag. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what needed to happen. I'm not meant to like wrap it and wear it. It's supposed to just be in pieces, and I'll just, put it in grids and let it be where it is for now,
And that's beautiful too, because we don't always have to wear the crystals, but also maybe we can get into, like, maybe someone here hasn't ever bought any crystal. Like, how would they be guided to, because there's so many crystals. You go into a shop, you see so many. How would you advise people to start?
So I always go back to it's really, and I use it all the time, and it's a Harry Potter line, but the wand really does choose the wizard. As you walk, my favorite story, I remember taking a very good girlfriend of mine to a crystal shop for the first time, probably about 8 or 9 years ago. And we were walking along the row, and she got to a shelf with chrysoprase. And she instinctively, I watched her. She was close to the wall, and then she sort of did this like dip 5 feet from the wall and then back to the wall. And I was like, well, that was interesting behavior. What was that about? And she's like, oh, I can't be near this. And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, I guess I better buy it. If I can't be near it, I better buy it, because she's that kind of person. But you really do, if you let yourself in the space of the shop. And I always say, buy crystals in the crystal stores. Don't buy them at the bookstores or places that they sell other things where the energy can be quite contaminated, unless you really know what kind of energy you're working with, especially if you're trying to get into the world of crystals. Support your local crystal shop. Really, really, it's always a better immersion, a better experience. You get a better understanding of what the hell they're all about and how much the energy of crystals really does shift you, because any crystal store you've ever been to, I'm sure, and definitely any crystal store I've ever been to, you step into a vortex. You step into a place where you're like, oh, magic's happening.
Yeah.
And so it's really, exactly. And so it's really about tapping into that, right? And feeling, I'm kind of drawn to this bowl. I'm really drawn to that shape. I'm really drawn to this color. And then read what it's about. Oh, this crystal is all about, connecting in with my personal power. Isn't that funny? I'm in a place where I feel completely disempowered. Or this crystal really helps with your creativity, and I haven't been able to put pen to pencil in 3 years. Things like that. And I guarantee that if you allow yourself to really immerse yourself in the experience of it, you really always connect with the stone that you need exactly precisely in that moment. And it becomes a game almost to be like, well, am I ever going to choose the thing that I don't need? And the answer is like, no, but it's funny to play that game anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And also, they can appear as gifts as well,
Yes.
like just like that, even from people who might not be that into crystals. So it's beautiful. You can also find them. Like sometimes you just find crystals. And but yeah, I think, yeah.
I often leave them places for precisely exactly that reason.
Yeah, for someone else to find it. It's beautiful. Yeah. I think everyone gets like excited when they see a crystal. I think so at least, but I think it's really beautiful, and yeah, like gifts from the earth, and we are made from earth, so there's no separation there.
Correct.
That's just an illusion. So of course things from nature affect us, and just having plants at home, even if we don't believe that they're like plant spirits and all of this, they still do something to us when we look at them and we see them, right?
And when we talk to them, right? I mean, that is proven that when you talk to your plants, they do better. They grow better. They thrive more. And when I tell people that crystals talk to me, they always kind of get a little bit wide-eyed, like, oh my God, that's an incredible superpower. And I always say, like, I'm just doing what I'm able, like I'm doing my version of talking to crystals in the way that some people talk to plants, in the way that many people talk to spirit, in the way that lots of people, do all kind, communicate with animal totems, right? Some people just always connect to certain animals. For me, it's birds, but crystals, they're very much a part of our earth, and we are not separated. And I think that, one of the things I love most about the crystal sort of trend happening now, which, 10 years ago when I was diving back into this world, the trend was not there yet. It was starting, but it was certainly not there yet. And the thing I love about it the most is that it really does help us to remember that we are of this earth, and we have a responsibility to the crystal kingdom and all the things above it, Yeah,
I agree. And so there's also some rituals around crystals, not to make it complicated, but when you get a crystal for the first time, what do you advise to do with it when you come home?
So the first thing I tend to do with my crystals is like, the first thing I do first and foremost is I thank them before anything else. Like before I cleanse them, before I charge them, before I do absolutely anything, I thank them, because if they found their way into my life, they're going to serve a purpose on some level. And I should say, like, I have quite literally hundreds, if not thousands of crystals. And I still thank them when they show up, even teeny tiny tumbles, because they make an impact. So that's the first thing I do. And by the way, it helps to cleanse them too, right? And then the next thing I do is I smudge them. So for those who aren't familiar with smudging, there are lots of different things that you can burn to alchemize the smoke, use the alchemized smoke to clean the stone of any other energy. So maybe somebody picked it up for a second and thought, I don't need that, that's not for me. Or maybe there have just been frequencies of people in the shop that were, on a lower vibration. You just really want to get the very, very, very most out of the crystal that you bought, because whether you spent $3 or $3,000 on that stone, that is something that is serving you, and you want it to serve your highest good. So you want to clean it of all energy. So smudging includes either sage, Palo Santo, cedar. You could use mugwort. You might want to use lavender. And, any one of those things would be a really good thing for that. You might want to go a little further depending on the stone. And this is where listening really comes in. This is where I tell everybody, like, my gift of talking to crystals and having them talk to me is not anything special. I just listen. And so sometimes I have a chunk of selenite which is a very, very angelic stone. But the nice thing about selenite is that it charges other crystals simply by putting them on there. So sometimes I'll have my selenite, work for me, and I'll put the stones on that selenite piece to just give it a little bit of an extra boost, particularly depending on where the moon is at, because that's sort of the cleansing part. But there are lots of ways to recharge your crystals. So the why for charging is because when, it's like anything else. If we're using that crystal and we're not giving them love, attention, and recharging opportunities, just like ourselves, right? If we don't sleep at the end of the day, the next day is going to be not good. So we charge them because they're doing work that we don't necessarily understand, right? And so we do things to sort of fill their battery back up, fill their cup back up. And that might be anything from putting them in water or even salt water. Pink Himalayan salt is best. Sometimes even just sitting in a bowl of salt is like more than enough for them. They love the moon, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, especially a full moon. They really, really love that. The opportunity just to absorb as much light as possible really, really works for them. Some crystals, but not all. It's good to be mindful. They like the sun. Now, certain crystals will blanch in the sun if you leave them out for too long. So it's good to be mindful of that and maybe do a little bit of research on which ones are sun sensitive. I tend to say all of the ite crystals. So selenite, mookaite, I'm drawing a blank now, but all the ite crystals, they're quite sensitive. But even other ones like Larimar is very sensitive. Citrine can be quite sensitive to the sun. It's just good to be mindful about that, but they do like the sun. And then they like the earth. So if you could bury them in a plant, if you've got outdoor space, put them right in the ground and let them be there, especially over a full moon or over a new moon. Or even if you can for a full cycle of months or multiple months, they really, really do like that. And it's great for their energetic health. And am I missing any? I don't think so. Yeah. So those types of things really, really help them to just, give you all you need from them.
Yeah. And all matter is created from and with energy. So everything that we have around us gets infused by energy, and crystals are very sensitive to pick up and emit energy. So it makes sense because some crystals are cut, so that's also just like water is really impressionable, or it's very easy to change the molecules of water. The crystals, unless we find it out in nature, like naturally, still then maybe we need to like cut them out. That creates energy to how they're transported, how they're managed, everyone and everything
how they're mined. I'm incredibly mindful about sourcing crystals that have not come from trauma, because it's the same reason that I don't personally eat meat, because if I can feel the trauma in the animal that I'm eating, I don't want to eat it. And if I can feel the trauma in the crystal that I'm holding, I don't want to hold it. So, it's good to be really, really, and that, that's part of the epidemic of the trend of crystals. It's sort of the dark side to it, unfortunately. So, really do try and be as mindful as possible about where they're coming from for exactly that reason,
Exactly. Yeah. With everything that we use from earth, if it's like herbs that we burn, if we can grow them ourselves or locally pick them, it's even better. And I like the cleansing in salt. It's very easy, and you can just leave it there for a day. Salt is so cleansing, even at home, if you want to cleanse the energy at home.
I will say though, Table salt is not is not nearly as good. I mean, table salt is mostly just chemicals. So if you're going to use something to charge your crystals, try not to use table salt. You're better to use Epsom salt or, you know, any other kind, pink Himalayan or whatever it is.
Yeah, definitely. And just sometimes it can be nice to be active in the cleaning process, like just taking the crystal and having, you know, the cold water is good to cleanse energy even from our hands. So it's great to just let the pouring water over the crystal and imagining how it's becoming, like visualize how it's purifying. Yeah. Then you're active in the but I did once, or now it was a long time ago, because living in an apartment, it's hard to bury the crystal and still know that it's going to be there. But I did that a couple of years ago, and I think I forgot it there, but it was quite a big obsidian from Mexico when I was there, and but it was so good. And then I put it, I don't know if it was the same, because I have two of them. I put one of them on the right by the window, but the window was open, so I think once it even dropped, like from many stories, it just dropped down into earth from that position, and it was like going back to earth. It wanted to jump.
Yeah,
so it's really interesting.
That practice is like really important. And two things. One, I want to say, when you're smudging, always open your windows. If you're smudging indoors, open your windows. Otherwise, you're just moving that energy around instead of letting it out. But also, the practice of putting crystals back in the earth and leaving them with intention there is a really, really, really good practice, particularly if you have and work with crystals a lot. Just with intention, mindfully putting those crystals back in the earth helps you to really know that you're doing that light work, because we are depleting our planet of so many resources, and we are putting so much garbage into our planet that, you know, if you're somebody who's concerned about your plastic consumption, if you're concerned about what's going on in the world, if you're concerned about global warming, if you're concerned about the oceans, then, you know, make a sacrifice of putting one of your favorite crystals back in the earth and thanking the earth for its work that it's doing, and then walk away from it and just know that it's there. And sometimes I've done this in many places on my travels around the world, and it always, you know, I still am able to connect with the energy of that stone wherever it's lying, you know, and it really is a beautiful practice to get into the habit of. So, you know, take that for sure.
Yeah. And as you said, it's beautiful to use crystals to charge the home and to use them in different ways. And I love like the different grids that you can create. Maybe you can talk about how, like, what is a crystal grid and why would you create it and how?
Sure. I kind of divide grids into two things, like to like basic and then elevated. So a basic grid to me is like just placing your crystals with intention. So, you know, just, you know, they don't necessarily need to be the same crystals. They don't even need to be, you know, the same color. They don't need to be anything, but just really being like, you kind of go with your frequency kind of matches this frequency, and then just laying them out in such a way. And so anybody who's got a big crystal collection, we all kind of do this basic gridding instinctively, right? We place them in loving ways in our plants, and we place them, you know, around the home for different reasons. They travel into our bedroom. They find their way into the kitchen, and we're like, yeah, this is part of the basic grid that I'm trying to create, the basic energetic structure of laying them out in the home, right? And then we have sort of the elevated grid, which is a really, really intentional grid. And that's, you know, if you Google crystal grids, that's what you're going to see. And so those elevated grids are like using the same stone, often in sequences of like 1, 6, 6, or, 13 being like a very, very high frequency number, right? And so we sort of have one stone in the middle, and then we have 6 stones outside and 6 stones further outside. And we often use sacred geometry to elevate the frequencies. And so, we're placing them in specific mandalas to really, really, really use the frequency and the vibration of the specific stones that we're using. So we're taking the stone right in the middle there, and we're elevating that frequency by using the way stones on the second, mandala, the second circle around them, to move towards the direction of what's happening on the outside. And so we can take, for example, a little bit of shungite in the middle and be like, I really want to have grounded energy everywhere that I go. That's what I'm trying to find, is more grounding. So what am I going to do? Well, maybe I'll take a little bit of, tourmaline, and I'm going to, find tourmaline is going to be the way that I'm going to find that grounding. And then I want to bring it into every part of my life. So I'm going to use clear quartz all around the outside, because I want it in every chakra, in every part of my energy body, and in every part of my life, right? And so that kind of grid is automatically going to take you higher. It's automatically going to work for you. And that's the kind of grid that you really don't touch until you feel that you've sort of gotten there, until you feel like, yep, I feel grounded enough that I could take, the tourmaline out, and I want to put something else in, maybe I want to put, malachite, because I want to be more heart grounded, or maybe you wipe the whole thing clear and, you start all fresh with all new stones for a new energy that you're trying to cultivate. So I use those sort of elevated grids in my life. I do them often around like New Year's or my birthday or a really powerful new moon. And I really, really, really try to create those grids, or those really intentional, even basic grids, as in just laying the stones out in a particular way. I try and create those around those times, because it helps the frequencies to really elevate all the way up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really good. And just to have, like, maybe in the beginning, just doing it, like you said, like intuitively, and just feeling how we want to have them. And then the more we evolve with the crystals, like get into more the more complex ones, and doing it with other intentions. And I also read many years ago that it's great to have a rose quartz in the left corner of your house or apartment. Yeah, exactly, your home. From the perspective of you walking in through your front door. And I've been practicing that for a long time. I always have a rose quartz crystal in the left corner, because I'm thinking also the left side is our yin side, right? Yeah. So it's the divine feminine. So it has to, and I think it was an amethyst on the right side. Maybe that's more masculine, yang energy. So yeah, it's really great. I used to also have, like, let's say you're working in a environment which is a little bit stressful, or it's a lot of energies around you, and for highly sensitive people and empaths it can be really tough. You can have a crystal on your desk, I love black tourmaline, actually, for those type of, also the energy that and frequencies that come from computers and phones. That's really a protective stone. Or I love obsidian in an environment like that. I also should say that, another type of grid that I do for clients is that I actually grid homes. So this is a practice of using clear quartz and placing them around the home. And it requires an awful lot of work, including like
moving all your furniture and really measuring the whole space. And then, using copper wired wrapped quartz and placing them around the home with a partner, just so that, I'm not missing anything, to be able to raise the frequency in your space. So this is a practice that is like, it's very, very, very ancient, but it holds frequency similar to the way that you're talking about having rose quartz and amethyst in your opposite corners. It does that kind of energetic work, particularly if you are, if you're a Reiki practitioner, if you have your Reiki level 1 or 2, that's a great thing to have in your home. It just as an empath, really. If you're sensitive, if your kids are sensitive, that's a really, really good thing to have in their space. And it's always really, really, really empowering to, to have those types of grids in the home as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also there's crystals. I mean, there's crystals for everything. Do you know a good crystal for sleep, like to have better and soothing sleep if you have some insomnia?
I give children constantly selenite. I find it to be super ethereal, really, really, really gentle and loving because of its sensitivity. Even when you look at it, when you touch it, it looks like it's just going to crumble, right? It's the thing that we used to make gypsum casts with. Before, in the 70s, you'd see kids walking around with a broken arm and they'd have like just this thick cast of gypsum. That's selenite, right? It's literally healing. And so selenite helps us to really, 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 really connect in with our highest self. So that's the one that's my go-to, for sure. But, in terms of sleep, I mean, there's lots of really good ones. I would say like, amethyst is nice for good dreams. Clear quartz is good for just connecting in with just the ability to feel safe in your body. It really, selenite is my go-to on that. But I would say like, I'll tell you, there's a lot of crystals that come into bed with me that come crawling in when I feel I need them. And again, that's really about listening, right? If you've got a great piece of apophyllite, sometimes, there are some people who can't go near it, can't have it in the bedroom. But there are other people who are like, oh, it's just so soothing. I need it beside me every night. Right. And so and then other people find if you're somebody who's always up in your head, always up in the clouds, always very airy, maybe tourmaline is what you need, something just to get you back into your body a little bit, or perhaps it's something a little bit more grounding like jasper, that, like a picture jasper, or something that's quite, sandy, even a sandstone or petrified wood, that might be nice, right? It just depends. It's just about listening. Really, it is. Yeah.
So beautiful. And the last question I have is also, since I work a lot with archangels, and I know the crystals, there's crystals that connect to the different archangels, which have different different energies.
Yeah.
Do you want to tap into that as well?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I love to say is like, we haven't really talked that much about it, but crystals really line up with our chakras, right? And, to that end, for a big majority of what we're talking about, so do the archangels and the angels, right? I mean, there are so many ascended masters and goddesses and crystals. I actually have the most beautiful deck that I bought from an incredible store in Sarasota, Florida, called the Crystal Cave. And oh my gosh, guys, if you can find your way there, it really is my favorite place. And actually, she has some of the stones that I sold to her from my grandfather's collection when he passed. But whether or not they're still there, Lord only knows. But I bought a crystal deck called the Crystal Mandala Oracle from her, and it connects those energies of the different angels and archangels and goddesses and ascended masters with the different crystals and the different energies and frequencies that they hold. It's a really beautiful deck for sort of bridging those gaps if you have a lot of questions on the archangel sphere and kind of what relates to what. But, really, if you want to connect in with your angels and with your guides, the best way to do that is to connect in with yourself. So tap into the chakras that you're feeling out of balance in. So if you're really, really, really like heartbroken, then, get yourself some Shatakite, get yourself some Malachite, get yourself some Azurite, get yourself some really earthy stones or rose quartz, something that will bring you right back into that frequency of love, and that will allow you to connect in with whoever it is you're trying to connect in with. Like if you're trying to get Michael and you're like, I just need some real deep, extra, powerful healing, connect in with your heart and feel him in that space, right? Or, if you need Gabriel, if you're really, really, really trying to get that higher, connection, that higher love, that just ethereal, goodness, then you want selenite, you want apophyllite, you want aquamarine, you want, those types of really, really, even amethyst, right? Really, really, really high vibe, so that you can, blend in with it. Or, maybe you want to connect in with, Raphael, right? And so you want to get a little bit more grounded, right? So you need some carnelian, you need some, red jasper or brecciated jasper, right? All, the frequency of, and this is the beauty, I think, of healing. The frequency of crystals is as connected to everything else as we are. So to access your angels, to access your guides, to talk to your higher self is just about really talking to your most loving self, right? It's just about being as loving with yourself as possible. So if you bring in, I don't know how to do that, I'm not able to do that, I'm not special that way, I don't have that gift, well, then that will be your truth. Right?
Yeah.
But if you allow yourself to tap in, you can get there. Go ahead.
Definitely.
What came through for you?
No, I was just, I agree with everything. It's beautiful. And it's all about connecting with yourself and letting yourself be your guide to find the tools that's great for you on your path. So I totally agree. And this talk was so beautiful. I really hope that this can help people out there that are interested and curious about crystals and haven't or have started their journey with crystals and having it as a tool and as just a medium to connect with the earth. I really hope that this conversation can help those people. And I will share your links in the. Do you want to share anything else before we end the call?
If you're in the Toronto area, I teach on this all the time. I'm going to be teaching about it in March and then again in May. I'll be away in April, but I teach it on a regular basis. So if it's something that you're interested in learning more about, then absolutely, hit me up for that for sure. janastern.com. That's really the thing.
Yeah, that's where they can find you and on Instagram. So I will share your links. And thank you so much for taking your time and sharing your wisdom and energy. I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you so much. This has been so special. You know, I often have moments in my life where I reflect on the beauty of being able to do what I do for a living. And this moment really is quite special to me, just to be able to talk about my favorite subject and know that it might be helping other people to, you know, find their journey. So I do encourage that if people have questions about crystals and what the right thing is for them, don't be shy to reach out to me. Just send me a message, DM me, email me, whatever feels good. And, you know, I'm happy to guide you on that journey, however you need.
Oh, thank you so much. And
thank you for your time. It's really
thank you. And thank you so much. I'm really grateful, and take care.
You too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful that you have taken your time to be here, and I hope that this can enlighten you around crystals. And do reach out to Jana if you have any questions or if you want to work with her, and just share this episode with anyone who you think would like to hear more about crystals. It really helps the podcast to grow and to reach more people and to raise the frequency in the world. So thank you so much for being here. Let's take a deep breath in and exhale. Namaste.